Imagine owning 200 boat slips. Every month, hundreds of boat owners send you money just to park something they already own, in water they don't own. No inventory, no manufacturing, no delivery trucks. No customer ever calls you asking for a refund because the product didn't work, because the product is just water. On paper, it looks like one of the easiest businesses in America, until a storm destroys $3 million of your docks in one night. Then your insurance doubles, your dredging permit gets stuck for years, and suddenly, the same water that made your marina valuable becomes the thing threatening to bankrupt you. So how does a marina actually make money? And why are investors still paying tens of millions of dollars to own one? Let's break down the economics, all the way down to the number that decides whether you sleep well during hurricane season. Before we calculate anything, we need to answer one question. What exactly are you buying? Because marina can mean three completely different businesses, and the word hides the difference on purpose. There's the wet slip marina, where boats literally live in the water, tied to a floating dock, exposed to every wave and every storm surge that reaches the shoreline. There's dry storage, where boats sit stacked on steel racks like books on a shelf and get launched by forklift. No docks to maintain, no dredging, no pilings rotting underwater, a completely different cost structure and a completely different risk profile. And then there's the full-service marina, where the real money may not come from the slips at all, but from fuel, repairs, storage, restaurants, and retail sitting on top of them, using the slips mainly as a way to guarantee foot traffic. Two marinas can have the exact same number of slips and completely different economics depending on which of these three businesses they actually are. This video focuses on the wet slip marina, the version most people picture when they imagine owning one, and the version that carries by far the most risk. Let's build a real example so the numbers actually mean something, because a spreadsheet full of abstract percentages doesn't tell you anything a business actually feels like. Call it Harbor Point Marina. 100 slips, mixed sizes, protected coastal water. Not directly on the open ocean, but close enough to feel every major storm that comes through. An average slip renting around $2,000 a month across the mix of boat sizes. That's 100 slips times $2,000 times 12 months, $2.4 million in gross slip revenue a year. Sounds incredible for a business with no product to manufacture and no shelf space to stock. But here's where the economics get weird, because that $2.4 million is the biggest number you'll hear all video, and by the time we're done subtracting from it, you'll understand exactly why marina owners don't feel nearly as rich as that headline number suggests. First, what does Harbor Point actually cost to acquire? Because you don't get to skip straight to collecting rent. Marina construction estimates put a small facility, 10 to 50 slips, at $500,000 to $2 million to build from raw ground. A mid-sized marina, 50 to 150 slips, which is where Harbor Point sits, runs $2 million to $10 million to build from scratch. A large marina, 150 slips or more, runs $10 million to $50 million or higher. If you're buying an existing marina instead of building one, pricing works by the slip, the same way ranch land prices by the acre. Distressed freshwater properties in secondary markets trade for as little as $10,000 per slip. Premium coastal marinas with a wait list and strong ancillary income can trade for $400,000 per slip or more. For our 100-slip Harbor Point, that's anywhere from $1 million to $40 million, depending entirely on location. And that spread alone should tell you something important. The physical water is identical, the price is not. You are never really buying water. You are buying a location, a permit history, and a customer base, and all three of those things are worth wildly different amounts depending on the zip code. Say you build it from raw land instead of buying it finished. Here's the part nobody puts in the real estate brochure. You cannot simply add more slips because demand exists the way a restaurant can add more tables. Marina expansion is restricted by environmental permitting in most jurisdictions, which means supply is structurally capped even when investors are lining up with money to invest. Individual slips, once permitted, cost $70,000 to $150,000 each to construct with utilities and finger piers included. For 100 slips, that's $7 million to $15 million in dock construction alone, before the office, before the fuel dock, before the travel lift that hauls boats out of the water for repair. And this is where most first-time marina buyers make their biggest mistake. They price the water, and they forget to price everything standing between the water and a paying customer. The permits, the dredging, the docks, the utilities running the length of every single slip. Now let's watch Harbor Point actually operate, because a business only becomes real once you start subtracting from it. $2.4 million gross slip revenue. But here's the part that surprises most new owners. The most profitable part of a marina isn't always the slips themselves. Layer on ancillary income. Fuel sales, where the marina often holds a local monopoly if it's the only pump for miles in either direction. Ships store retail, snacks, tackle, marine hardware, the stuff boaters forgot to bring. Repair labor charged by the hour at rates most car mechanics would envy. Haul-out fees and winter storage, which in colder markets can cost as much as the slip rental itself. For a well-run 100-slip facility, call that an extra $600,000 a year. Total revenue, $3 million. Now subtract, and this is where the fantasy starts meeting the fixed costs. Payroll for a harbor master, dock hands, a fuel dock attendant, security overnight, minus $400,000. Insurance, minus $250,000, and we'll come back to that number because it's the one most likely to change without your permission. Maintenance, docks, pilings, the travel lift, the seawall that's slowly being undermined by every tide, minus $200,000. Utilities to keep the whole property lit, powered and running 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, whether it's peak boating season or the dead of February, minus $150,000. Property tax and administration, minus $150,000. Add it up and you've subtracted $1.15 million, leaving Harbor Point with roughly $1.85 million in net operating income. That's a real healthy number. That's the number that gets people excited about buying a marina in the first place. But there's one expense on that list that can completely destroy the calculation, and it's the one most owners underestimate until the renewal letter physically arrives in the mailbox. Insurance premiums for marinas in hurricane-exposed regions, the Gulf Coast, Florida's Atlantic coast, the Carolinas, have been rising sharply, driven not by any individual owner's claims history, but by regional storm loss modeling that treats every property in the zone the same. Some operators report renewal premiums arriving at multiples of the prior year's cost, with zero room to negotiate, because the insurer isn't pricing your marina, it's pricing your coastline. Take that $250,000 insurance line and imagine it tripling to $750,000. Your $1.85 million NOI just dropped to under $1.4 million, and you didn't lose a single tenant, didn't have a bad season, didn't make a single operating mistake. The number moved because the map you're sitting on moved. Here's the moment where the audience understands why institutional investors want these things anyway. Marinas trade at cap rates of roughly 6% to 10%, with well-located wait-listed coastal facilities trading at the tight end, 6 to 7%, because buyers are willing to accept a lower yield in exchange for scarcity and stability. Take Harbor Point's $1.85 million NOI and apply a 7% cap rate. Divide $1.85 million by 0.07. That's a valuation of roughly $26 million for a 100-slip marina generating $3 million in gross revenue. Now scale it up. A 200-slip version of the same facility, doing $5.2 million in slip revenue, plus $1.3 million in ancillary income, $6.5 million total, running $3.2 million in operating expenses, nets $3.3 million in NOI. At a 7% cap rate, that's a $47.1 million valuation. $47 million for what is functionally boat parking with a fuel pump attached. That's the number that gets pension funds and infrastructure investors interested. And it's not a small detail that these buyers increasingly treat marinas the same way they treat airports and toll roads. A scarce, permitted, cash-flowing monopoly on a piece of geography nobody can replicate next door. But there's a problem. That $47 million valuation assumes the marina keeps producing $3.3 million every single year, indefinitely, without interruption. A hurricane doesn't care about your cap rate, and it doesn't read the appraisal. This is where marinas stop looking like every other real estate asset we've covered, and it comes down to four enemies working against the owner simultaneously. Every single day the marina is open. Enemy number one, empty slips. No tenant, no revenue. And unlike an apartment, a slip doesn't rent itself out to just anyone. It needs a boat owner in that specific length range, in that specific local market, willing to commit for a season or a year. And boat ownership itself rises and falls with the broader economy in ways slip owners can't control. A soft year in recreational spending shows up on a marina's occupancy sheet before it shows up almost anywhere else in the local economy. Enemy number two, aging infrastructure. Docks don't last forever, no matter how well they're built. A significant share of marina dock infrastructure nationally is already past its intended design life, which means floating dock replacement, piling repair, and seawall rebuilding aren't hypothetical future costs sitting somewhere down the road. They're bills already accumulating quietly on the balance sheet of nearly every older marina in the country, whether the current owner has budgeted for them or not. Enemy number three, regulation. You cannot simply build more water, and you can't simply deepen the water you already have without a fight. Dredging, removing sediment so boats have enough depth to float without scraping bottom, requires environmental permitting through multiple overlapping agencies and has to be repeated periodically as sediment refills the channel year after year. Supply is structurally capped by design, which is good for pricing power once you're inside the business and brutal for anyone trying to expand their way out of a bad year. Enemy number four, the weather. And this is the enemy that makes marinas fundamentally different from a mall, a ranch, or an airport. A mall that loses an anchor tenant has months, sometimes years, to find a replacement before co-tenancy clauses fully unravel the property. A ranch that gets a bad drought year has a bad year, not a destroyed asset. A marina that takes a direct hit can lose its physical structure, its customer base, and its insurability in a single night. In October 2024, Hurricane Helene made landfall far from where most people expect hurricane damage, hitting Hickory, North Carolina, on a lake, not the coast. A couple who had left their jobs and sold their home 7 months earlier to buy Lake Hickory Pub and Marina were still settling into ownership when debris struck their first dock. Later that same night, while they were home with their kids, a section of the marina gave way entirely. Customer boats were swept away. Insurance covered only part of the damage, and already carrying debt from the purchase, the owners were hesitant to take on more financing to rebuild, leaning instead on FEMA assistance and support from their old community. 7 months. That's the entire runway between we bought our dream business and we're rebuilding docks we can't fully insure our way out of losing again. This isn't an isolated story, and it isn't limited to freak inland flooding either. After Hurricane Sandy, the town of Atlantic Highlands, New Jersey, needed $14.5 million just to rebuild its public marina harbor. Boats were thrown onto land. Piers snapped in half like they'd been built out of matchsticks instead of steel and timber. New Rochelle needed over $1.5 million to repair a municipal marina's docks, fuel lines, and pilings after that same storm. And even with FEMA covering 90% of the cost, the city still had to front over $1 million of its own money and wait through what officials called significant bureaucratic delay before getting reimbursed. Insurance doesn't move fast. FEMA doesn't move fast. And meanwhile, the mortgage on the marina, the payroll, the property tax, none of it pauses just because the docks are underwater. Here's the mechanism that ties all four enemies together into one structural risk. Insurers in the highest risk coastal zones have in some cases stopped writing new marina policies at all, not raised the price, simply declined to offer coverage, which means an owner can end up holding a fully paid off, physically intact asset that the market will not insure. And an asset nobody will insure is an asset almost nobody will finance. And an asset nobody will finance is an asset that's extremely difficult to sell for anything close to what it was worth the year before the storm, even if the docks themselves survived completely intact. The damage doesn't have to touch your marina directly to hurt you. It just has to touch enough of your region that the insurance market decides your zip code is the problem. So two marinas can sit 10 miles apart, look almost identical from the water, both fully occupied, both charging similar rates, and be completely different businesses financially. Here's how to actually tell them apart before you sign anything. A good marina sits in protected water, ideally behind a natural breakwater or well inland from direct storm paths. It runs high occupancy with a genuine waiting list, not a list the broker invented for the listing. It has a diverse mix of boat sizes, so it isn't dependent on 3 or 4 large yacht tenants whose departure would gut the income statement overnight. It earns from multiple revenue streams: fuel, repair, storage, retail, not just bare slip rent. Its docks are modern, recently built or recently replaced, not quietly rotting under a fresh coat of paint. It qualifies for favorable insurance because insurers can actually model its risk with confidence. And it faces limited competition because the same permitting wall that keeps new supply out works in its favor once it's already inside the business. A bad marina sits directly exposed to hurricane paths with no natural protection. Its docks are aging past their design life, with deferred maintenance the seller conveniently never mentioned. Its insurance is expensive or increasingly difficult to obtain at all, sometimes only through a surplus lines carrier at a rate that erases half the NOI. Occupancy is inconsistent, rising and falling with the local economy instead of holding steady on a wait list. It carries heavy acquisition debt stacked on top of thin operating margins. It has pending dredging problems it can't get permitted to fix, so boats are already scraping bottom at low tide. It depends on one major revenue source, usually bare slip rent, with nothing to fall back on when occupancy dips even slightly, and it has no pricing power. Because in a soft local market, the boat owner can always go 10 miles down the coast to the marina that actually rebuilt its docks after the last storm. So does owning a marina make you rich? It can. Harbor Point at 200 slips, run well, in the right water, with the right insurance and the right mix of tenants, is a legitimately $47 million asset throwing off over $3 million a year. And that's exactly the kind of yield that has institutional money quietly buying up marinas across the country and compressing cap rates in the process. But a marina was never really a passive income business, no matter how the fantasy gets sold in the brochure or the listing photos. It's infrastructure, it's real estate, it's hospitality, it's a fuel business, it's a maintenance operation running every single day of the year, whether or not a single boat is tied up. And in some parts of America, it's an ongoing bet against the weather, placed one hurricane season at a time, whether the owner realizes they've placed that bet or not. The best owners aren't just collecting rent checks from boat owners. They're managing occupancy, pricing, insurance renewals, permits, debt, and millions of dollars of infrastructure sitting directly in a body of water that doesn't care about any of it. And that's the paradox sitting at the center of the entire business. The water is what makes a marina valuable, and the water on the wrong night is exactly what can take it all away.